I'm taking this track over the mountains tomorrow. They said, no, you can't do that. That's impossible. But I was in the mind of, oh, they don't understand, like, this is a touring bike, it's not a normal bike. I can get over this. And I set off. Immediately, I'm hit with a massive alpine, like, grade climb, all gravel, none of it's roads. And then I get up towards the top and this thunderstorm rolls in. Most incredible display of thunder I've ever witnessed. I'm absolutely drenched at this point. The entire track turns into a massive flash flood. Bike's soaked, gears soaked, everything's a bit miserable. This track just gets worse and worse and worse. I'm on a 75 kilogram bike with no suspension. The bike has no place being there at all. And it's about 100 kilometers across to the nearest road.
Welcome to the Seek Travel Ride podcast, where we share the stories and experiences of people who have undertaken amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello, I'm your host Bella Malloy, and for today's episode of Seek Travel Ride, I'm excited to introduce my guest, Jamie Hargreaves. In May 2024, Jamie set off from his hometown near Derby in England with the destination of Derby, Australia. What makes this journey particularly interesting, though, is that he's retracing the route his father cycled 40 years previously. He even set off with the very same bike his dad used on that trip as well. Where possible, Jamie's trying to stick to the same roads his father took, sometimes even sleeping in the same spots. And it's been great to watch him recreate those very same images from those his father took some 40 years ago, photographically documenting the change from what it was like then to what it's like now. He's 8 months into this journey, which has already seen him crossing through England, Europe, Turkey, Georgia, Russia, and then through the vast deserts of Central Asia. Seeing the cities of the old Silk Road before crossing over into Afghanistan and then Pakistan. There have been times where, due to visa issues, Jamie's had to change his route, which has led him to travel through different countries altogether, putting his own stamp on this adventure. Something I've been fortunate to learn after interviewing so many guests now is that the best experiences of bike travel are made up of the people you meet along the way, and the cultural experiences which lend itself perfectly to this form of adventure. Jamie has spent good portions of his travel now cycling solo, as well as linking up with other bike travellers in this community, sharing the experiences on the road with newfound friends. I'm super looking forward to exploring what it's been like for Jamie so far on this adventure as he connects up with that sense of family history and how the reality of his own bike tour matches up with the stories he's no doubt been raised on since he was a little kid listening to his dad talk. Jamie Hargreaves, a big warm welcome to the show.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm excited to tell my story.
I'm super excited to finally hear it, Jamie. We've been tag teaming, it feels like, for months now, since I first came across you doing this trip. I think you were in Split?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
It was. But here we are, and I'm super chuffed. I've got so many questions for you. But Jamie, the question I start my show with, and I ask it of all my guests, is, Jamie Hargreaves, do you remember the very first bike you ever rode?
Whew, now that's a tough question. So I think I can't remember my first ever bike, but I can remember the first one which I properly got into riding, which was it was a standard little red, terrible children's bike, fixed gear, nothing special. But yeah, I remember I absolutely loved it until it was ran over in a car.
Oh no, this is a tragedy. Was it run over like in the drive of your home and by your own family car?
It was I left it, we were camping and I left it behind one of my dad's friend's cars and he reversed straight over.
Oh, tragedy. So tragic.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, the son of someone who's done such extensive bike travel, you've clearly heard your dad's stories being told to you so often, right? And I was wondering, what's it like growing up as a kid of someone who's cycled to the other side of the world?
Oh, it's absolutely chaotic. My entire house is a nut job house. Everybody is mad in my house, and so there's no exceptions. I absolutely loved being raised in that family. It's brilliant. We had adventures all the time when we were younger, going off camping and trekking and cycling and climbing, everything. It's just such a brilliant way to be raised.
I've done so many interviews now with some great bike travelers. And it's always struck me how there's people who set off on journeys like this and they're going to be wild camping and they've never camped before. And I was thinking when I was setting my question set up for you, Jamie, I was thinking, oh, I'm pretty sure this guy camped when he was little.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you could be a child of a bike traveller and not be exposed to the wonders of camping out in nature, right?
Yeah, no, like we used to go camping every year, France or Switzerland, in England. I'm very lucky to have been given the opportunities I was when I was younger. And then when we used to do the smaller stuff, that was when it got a bit more dicey. Like when I'd go off for adventures with my dad and we'd go bothying and stay in caves and like all sorts of stuff, like the rogue destination camping.
It was sort of like the master and the apprentice. All the while is prepping you for taking this journey on, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's not just bike travel, though, that you do. And I found this as well. Another common thread with people who do these type of journeys, especially outdoor lovers, is, yeah, you're fine to travel on a bike, but often you've got other passions which are with the outdoors as well. Something I came across is you're pretty into rock climbing, aren't you, and bouldering?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Rock climbing's, that's my thing back home. Like that's what I'm into the most sport wise. I wouldn't even really classify myself as a proper cyclist. Like obviously I'm doing this adventure, which as mad as it sounds, like I wouldn't classify myself as a cyclist. Like very into my mountain biking, but never really road biking. It's never taken me. I mean, I'm just into anything outdoorsy really, but yeah, climbing is for sure my forte. That's my go-to.
And so have you sought out opportunities to do a bit of sneaky climbing along the way?
I've got some plans. But the problem is obviously I can't take my own gear with me. And there's certain places which I've really wanted to do some stuff, but then you have to have people to climb with, etc. So it's a bit difficult. But I've got potential plans for some stuff which will be announced further down the line, not at the moment.
Watch this spot. And it's something that occurred to me when I knew I was interviewing you. And you're doing a trip that's from Derby to Derby. And I had to have a look on the map. Which Derby in Australia are you going to? And I was looking and it's like some indescript place in Western Australia. We'd say it's like at the back of Burke, beyond nothing, like blink and miss it sort of stuff. Sorry to people in Derby. I'm sure your place is amazing. But there is a place in Tassie which I think they actually pronounce as Derby, and it has got some of the most mega mountain biking that Australia is known for. It's world class. And I was thinking when you said you love mountain biking, I was thinking, oh, see, if you went to Derby instead of Derby, this could be the next generation's addition to the trip. And then who knows, maybe years down the track, you have kids, they've got an extra step to do, right?
Oh, yeah, then they've got to add on from that.
Yeah. They've got to find like a Derby or a Derby in, like, I don't know, the US?
Yeah, something like that. That could be good, though. Yeah, because at the moment, I'm going to be cycling from Darwin all the way down to Sydney. I was going to say that it's around Sydney, somewhere around that side. I would like to stay there for a bit and live the surfer lifestyle.
Well, you'd be right age for like a working holiday visa and stuff, wouldn't you? Is that something you're entertaining the thought of?
Oh, yeah, that's my plan. I'd love to work in FIFO. I want to do my rope access course and then work in FIFO for a couple of months just to save up from this trip.
The opportunities are endless. Then you can go and discover Derby as well, or Derby, however they pronounce it in Tassie.
Carry on.
Jamie, endpoints and stuff like that aside, a journey like this is very much about what happens in between. But I want to rewind to find out, how did you come to the idea that you would do this journey yourself? It's one thing to hear your dad's stories, but why choose to do this yourself?
Okay, so I was actually reminded recently by a friend who moved to Germany years and years ago. He was one of my childhood best friends. And he sent me a message because I was going to be cycling through Stuttgart, which is where he lives. So I sent him a message asking whether he was going to be there whilst I was going through and whether we could meet up and stuff. And he said, no, but I'll meet you in Australia in my Land Rover, which triggered a memory in my mind. And I'm really surprised that he answered that, because Like I always used to, so I've wanted to do this trip since I was in year two. I've wanted to do this trip literally for over 15 years almost.
Shout out to your dad for planting the seed, right? That's awesome.
Yeah. And I remember back in the day, I used to say to my friend, like I used to try and get him to hop on board with the idea. I wanted to get him to cycle with me to Australia. And he always used to say, I won't cycle it, but I'll get in a Land Rover or a Range Rover and I'll do it with you. And he sent me that message and it genuinely almost brought me to tears because I completely forgot about that. And he'd remembered that. Yeah, as I say, I've been planning this since I was in year two. Like I've wanted to do this since I was in year two, but there were like a couple of years, quite a while, where I sort of forgot of that dream because I wanted to do other stuff. But then I came back to this idea over the past sort of 3 years. And then the idea of leaving uni was the perfect opportunity to come out here and do it.
Take the proper travel gap year, but
Yeah.
travel in a way that's so fully immersive as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, were there certain stories that you remember clearly from your dad that you've been thinking about on this journey? Because I can only imagine there's probably literally hundreds or thousands of them, but are there certain places that you remember your dad talking about to you that when you decided this was going to happen, that you were thinking, oh, I can't wait to get there and actually see what that's like?
I mean, honestly, I can't pinpoint specific points. Like there's so many stories that I've been told through the years. Every time I think that I know the whole story, he comes out with something new, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's. He just comes out with new stories all the time. But there's specific ones which I always find amazing, which is like even from when he was working on a trawler in Australia, once he'd got there, having shootouts with other fishing boats and other random chaotic events that happened. I think the thing which attracted me always was the more dangerous side of his journeys, from where when he traveled through Pakistan, he was shot at and like all sorts of stuff. The things like that, whilst to a lot of people, you don't ever want those experiences. To me, for some reason, in my chaotic mind, I want those things to happen because I like being in interesting situations and forcing myself to react to like situations and handle it.
Have you sort of been encouraged to do that growing up as well? I'm not saying your parents and hello, Jamie's mum and dad, but I'm not saying that they're encouraging you to go somewhere and be shot at by any measure, but have they sort of encouraged you to not live a sheltered life wrapped up in cotton wool, so to speak, and to just embrace that type of life as well?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've been allowed to go out and do my own adventures and encouraged to from a young age. Like I've always been out and about wherever I am, doing my own thing, going off on big climbing adventures with my friends. And like we get into some pretty hectic situations and you just have to deal with it. That kind of thing makes you more competent. That's what I found out. Like you can't live a sheltered life. Yeah, when you go out and do things which put you in very uncomfortable situations, that's where you learn the most.
Oh, 100%. And it's sort of by doing those things before setting off as well, you can't know yourself just how much you've given yourself this gift of this experience of being able to know that you can deal with stuff.
Yeah.
You've been in those situations, so you've got previous experience, whether it was on a bike or not, it's by the by. Like, I think it's like an extra mental edge.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's really good to be able to have that sort of mentality of whatever situation you get in, you're going to do the best of your ability, and you know that you've been able to cope with things go wrong in the past, and like because inevitably things go wrong when you're doing this type of things, and you just have to deal with it.
You've had some things go wrong on this journey as well. Like you've had things that I guess have happened that for a lot of people would be a reason to maybe stop as well. You've had a couple of, if I was an Aussie, I'd say you've had a couple of bad stacks, about a couple of crashes. At one stage it looked like you'd broken your hand. Sadly, there was an accident which actually did break your bike.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah, those are the worst times. Is when you think that the trip's over. Like, because that is what happened. Like, the first crash, when I crashed in Holster, that was that was my first proper low moment of the trip, because so basically my brakes were failing and getting worse and worse throughout the day, and I couldn't fix it really. and I knew that there was a bike shop sort of just past Holstadt. So in my head, I was thinking, right, okay, as long as I can get there, then I'll be fine. And I'm riding, and it's getting to the point where basically, if I'm on a downhill, I can't stop. Literally can't stop. Like I've got to freewheel it out. The problem was in the cabling. Basically, it was the cabling was all rusted up, so it wasn't squeezing. And yeah, I get to this point. It's sort of flat running alongside the lake, and it's starting to get steeper and steeper and steeper, and it gets to must be about 25% gradient. Yeah, around 22% gradient, and just going down, and I know that I can't stop. And it goes down, and then it gets to this corner which goes underneath a rail track. And so I just about managed to hold it on going around the corner. And then I went round the corner, and there was a wall 6 meters in front. I immediately in my head, I thought, if I'm going into that wall, like my bike is going to be gone. Like it's going to be completely gone. So I just jumped off the bike. I bailed like straight away, and yeah, smacked my shoulder up and my hand on my arm. Luckily, the only damage that I got to the bike, only because I jumped off, was my front wheel was buckled, but the rest of it was absolutely fine. Like otherwise, it would have been completely totaled. I managed to get to Holstadt by walking with my bike. I fixed my buckle, like, 'cause it wasn't a severely bad buckle. It was just a bit askew. So I fixed that, and then I ended up having a horrendous night in Holstadt because I've been roughing it the whole time, and wherever I can, I don't put my tent up. So if I find a little shelter, I'll stay in a little shelter. And on the other side of Holstadt, 'cause you have to get a ferry across. So on the other side of Holstadt, there was a little lunch cabin thing, basically just like a picnic thing. It had a roof, no walls on the side, but it was like backed up against the cliff face. And I set up to bivvy out in there. And then I heard this thunder rolling in. So I get out. I had like a survival or orange survival bag just in case of emergency, whenever you need a waterproof blanket to sit on or whatever. And so I strung that up with my bungee cords outside because there wasn't really anywhere that I could pitch my tent up. Well, anywhere properly anyway. I slept on this bench, and I'm just hearing this thunder coming in. And it got worse and worse and worse to the point where like it was hailing really badly. I don't know if you read in the news, but it was in Austria, obviously. And that specific thunderstorm, the exact place was where that plane went through, and the entire windscreen of the plane got smashed to bits by hailstorms. Yeah, that was literally directly above my head.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's not comical when you're in it. Like you might look
Yeah.
back on it now going, gee, remember when I went through that hailstorm?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. I couldn't actually, the noise from it would be nuts.
Yeah, it was mad. It was like, yeah, it was just hammer beating in my ear. And then the wind was coming up from the lake, because obviously it's a massive lake, so it collects wind really bad. And it was just blitzing me, and I got drenched. My sleeping bag was soaked. All my gear was soaked. So I get up here at about like 12 o'clock at night. I get out my sleeping bag. I'm soaking wet. It's freezing cold. It's hailing outside. And I set up my tent like as best that I could, like no pegs. Like literally, it's just set up like appallingly, but it's going to be dry inside. Well, I say dry inside. You have to set up the inner first. That's all soaked. And then I had to set up the outer on top of that. Then I grab all my stuff, and I'm taking it inside.
And it's all wet already.
Yeah, and everything's wet. Yeah, and you can't forget the fact that my hand is completely mangled.
And your shoulder.
Yeah, and my shoulder, yeah. And I was in complete agony, like setting up. Like I could only really set up the tent one-handed. And so I was doing that. And I set up the tent to get all my stuff in. And then I'm just lying there, soaking wet, drenched, all my gear is soaked. And I'm just there as I say, in agony. Like I've got to sleep on one side because if I roll over, then it's just torture. And at that point, yeah, that was like my lowest point of the trip. At that point, I was just thinking like, this is awful. I mean, no part of me wanted to give up, but then in the morning, I woke up and my hand was swollen like the Michelin Man. Yeah, I was Edward Sausage Hands. It was horrible. Yeah, my entire arm was messed up, and I couldn't move my fingers at all. Like my entire hand was like frozen. And at that point, I thought, I've broken my hand, like I've messed my hand up.
Was it your left hand or your right hand?
It was my right hand. Yeah, it was my right hand.
I'm just thinking, as a climber,
Oh, yeah.
our hands are critical regardless, but like as someone whose passion is climbing,
Yeah.
it'd be extra gutting, right?
Yeah. It was awful. At that point, I was debating whether, like in my mind, it was broken. So I was thinking whether I was going to fly back home, try and rest it properly, and then fly back out, or whether I was going to stay with my friend who I told you about previously, who lives in Holstadt, because I could have gone back to his home and then just left my bike somewhere and gone back out. But either way, so I go to doctors in Holstadt. I get the ferry across, go to the doctors, and they say they can't really do anything about it. They're going to have to go to a big hospital. So I go back, get on the train with my bike, go all the way back to the next like major city. They did numerous x-rays, held me for like 4 hours, and then I got the all clear. They said, no, it's not broken. And I was thinking, what? How? I don't understand. Yeah. And they told me that basically it was just an incredibly bad contusion. So it's all like ligament or tendon damage. I can't remember what one of the two. So yeah, like they told me that I'd need to rest it for 2 weeks minimum, and then I could probably get back on the road. And so I got the train straight away back to Salzburg, where I'd already been. I rested it for 2 days and then got back on the road.
2 weeks, 2 days. Details.
So I basically rode with like one hand for like a week and a half, and then it wasn't that bad because I could sort of rest my wrist on the thing, so I could use my wrist to control. Like I could just only brake with my left hand. So.
And I'm guessing you obviously got the brakes fixed.
Yeah. I got that all sorted when I was in Salzburg.
Can I just say, I've mentioned it so many times on the podcast. I'm a bit of a broken record on this, listeners. But Jamie, I'm not great with descending. I've got a stupid descending fear because I've crashed. And what you described is like my fear lived out in reality. Descending something that steep and there's no brakes.
Yeah.
It's like horror emoji.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's when you're put in that situation of like you have no control. You can't do anything. You can only react to the situation. That's all you can do. Yeah, it's awful. But yeah, that crash is still like, it's really annoying. It's still affecting me. You know, my hand's still messed up. Like, it's a lot better. I'm able to move it like just as I used to, but it hurts from time to time, and I can't bend my fingers backwards quite as much as I used to.
I wonder also, like I know you set off, you've experienced some really hot days and some hot summers, but you've had some pretty darn cold temperatures too, especially recently. How is it going with the temperature changes? And how are you going with the temperature changes? I know you're a proud northerner. You relish the cold, miserable weather, right? But honestly speaking, how has it been managing the extremes of weather, from the very scorching hot temperatures to like bitterly cold, temperatures as well?
I mean, like, as you say, I'm proud northerner, and I love cold weather. Cold weather's my thing. I'm for sure a cold weather person. So doing the cold stuff, that's fine by me. I don't care. Yeah, really doesn't bother me at all. Like we were down to -24 up in Pakistan, and that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is heat. I can't stand heat. The hottest I had it was in Turkey, and it got up to like 40. I think one day it got up to like 45 degrees.
Yeah, because Turkey was scorching hot this summer.
It was insane. And to me, that's just like my absolute nightmare, because like, as most cycle tourists do, I've got a tent where you can take the outer off, so you can pitch just the inner, which is, that for anybody who's listening, is brilliant advice. Get yourself a tent where like you're able to pitch just the inner, because on those hot days it's a lifesaver, because you don't want the bugs, you don't want to bivvy out with all the mosquitoes or whatever. Yeah, you're able to basically just sleep out in the open. But at that heat, it's horrible. I would just be putting up my roll mat and then sleeping on top of my roll mat, basically completely naked, just lying on top of it in a puddle of sweat. It's horrible.
Being in a tent in hot weather, if you had to put the outer fly on as well.
Oh, it'd be scorching.
It's like you're camping in a sauna. It's just horrendous.
Yeah, it's an oven.
I remember, because I've interviewed someone who you've toured with, Malachi. Hi, Malachi. And I remember he was sharing some images and photos from his journey, and it was, I think, through Central Asia, one of the scenic parts of your trip, right? In, Uzbekistan, crossing the endless desert.
Yeah.
But I remember you had some cold nights there because you had footage where you hadn't pitched your tent, but I think your sleeping bag was covered in like a layer of ice.
Yeah, that was a fun night. So, yeah, me and Malachi had decided to bivvy out, and Ben was in his tent. Ben was another guy who we were cycling with at the time. Yeah, we decided to bivvy out, and it got down to like minus, I think it was like minus 13, minus 14, maybe something like that. Yeah, woke up and just a layer of frost like on the outside of the sleeping bag.
You are the Iceman. So hang on, did you actually sleep in that? Because I have to admit, I feel the cold, and I don't like the extreme heat, but I'm an Aussie, so I can probably deal with heat a bit better than I can do with really cold weather, but I can't sleep if I'm freezing cold. Like, do you sleep? Is this like an inner skill of yours, being a northerner? You can take the cold and you can sleep through anything?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I've got to check up my sleep. My sleeping bag is rated to minus 20. Well, that's minus 20 comfort level as well, so extreme like minus 30. And I took that because I knew that I'd be going to some cold place, and like where it's sunny, whether it was hot, I was suffering like because if it was like slightly too cold to sleep, like just with nothing on, but it's too hot, then it would be too hot to have my sleeping bag. Sometimes it was bad during the summer, but going through the desert, it was brilliant.
Because I'm sort of thinking about the places you've just been to recently, and I think it was in Afghanistan. You had the most amazing ride through one of the mountain passes there.
Salang Pass, yeah.
I'm a mountain lover, Jamie. I saw the images from your ride there and I was like, oh, this is mega. And your sleeping bag, that's the terrain that your sleeping bag was made for, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, my sleeping bag has come in clutch a lot of times on this trip. That was certainly one of them, because that night got very cold. Because we had no idea where we were actually going to be camping, where we were going to be staying or anything. You know how it is, it's chaotic. Like when you're on the road, most of the time you're just figuring it out along the way. And we knew we were going up the Salang Pass. We were heading up and it was getting darker and darker, and we were up in the snow. The temperature dropped rapidly. It was like freezing. Like we both had gloves on, hat on, everything on, and we were getting so cold. And luckily, at the side of the road, literally this is in the middle of nowhere, like there was nothing else there. In the middle of this road, there was someone's garage pit. And so we found that and we were like, right, let's just stay here. Bearing in mind, in Afghanistan, well, from what I've heard, it's illegal to wild camp there. The Taliban don't like it because obviously anybody can get you. Yeah, so we were a bit precarious of it. Yeah, I set up my tent in the outside, like the doorway, sort of blocking the wind, and then it was to be fair, I didn't have any problems with it. I was nice and warm and cozy in the tent, but then the next morning, when I got outside, it was always cold. Yeah, that was it. That was a hard one to start when your things are completely frozen, like everything's cold, everything's chilly, and you got to pack up your bags, and it's just the worst.
Oh yeah, and actually I wasn't there, but I have seen some video that you've done where like your socks where you were drying them have just like frozen.
Oh,
where was that? I feel like that was really early on.
Yeah,
like where on earth was this place?
Yeah, so that's actually a slight misunderstanding. The socks weren't frozen. Although I have had that. I've had my socks frozen. But that specific video which you're thinking of, that was in Turkey. That was one of the first days which I was with Malachi for. And because I was sweating so much in Turkey, it's a bit grim, but like the socks, they become like stale.
Is it like salty, crusted sweat?
Yeah, it's just salty, crusted sweat. It's horrible. And that's not like a case of me not washing the socks. That was after washing the socks. Like you wash them as much as you can. You can't get rid of the staleness. It's really weird. You have to break in the socks in the morning. It's awful. Like, I bought some new socks after that.
Jamie's mum, you can rest okay there. I didn't know this was a thing.
It's awful. It's horrible.
Here I was thinking they were frozen.
Yeah, no.
But you have had that as well.
Yeah, I've had that as well. Yeah, I've had frozen gloves and frozen socks, etc. But I'm used to that from climbing, obviously.
You would call it dirt bagging. Like, you
Oh
are
yeah.
definitely wild camping everywhere, every day possible. And I guess unless you're invited to stay by some local somewhere and invited to come in.
Yeah, well, through Europe, that was my proper dirtbagging stage of the trip because everything's like all the hotels, everything's insanely expensive, and I don't waste money where I don't need to. Yeah, I was dirtbagging and proper roughing it through Europe. But then as soon as you get over to like the stands and stuff, like I mean, so obviously going through the desert, camping wherever you can, but when you get to, as I said, like Afghanistan, too dodgy really to camp. Like I only camped 2 nights, and then Pakistan, there's literally no way you can camp. There's not really any way you can camp. Up in the mountains, like you can camp, but then some of the nights it was really insanely cold. So it was always nice to have a hotel where, like, even though it's no heating, no hot water.
It's basic.
Yeah, you're basically sleeping outside but inside.
Yeah. You're out from the wind and the rain, but you're going to be freezing cold regardless.
Yeah, for sure. But most of the time, though, like when I can camp, I will camp.
We've spoken about some grim camps, but you must have had some pretty epic camps as well on this trip. Like, they haven't all just been grim bus shelters or, roadside verges where there's a pile of rubble or something like that. Like, I want to know the good moments too. It's not all low. Like, give me some high camping, high wild camping moments that you've had.
Well, I mean, there's been so many. It's really hard to pinpoint specific camps that were amazing, but I'd say like Cappadocia, bivvying out like underneath as Malachi calls them, the penis rocks.
Yes. Oh, but I don't think it's just malachite. I mean, they're very phallic. Let's be honest here, right?
Yeah, they are very. That was incredible. And going down Croatia, I made an effort whilst I was going down Croatia to find like a good camp spot by the side of the sea every single night, and those are the best for me. Like I love I love camping in general, but like the best camp spots are when you have somewhere next to the sea, so you can go for a swim, chill on the beach, and just it's lovely. Watching the sunset over the ocean, it's incredible.
It's meditative too. Like, even just watching the current and the tides.
Yeah.
Just watching the sunset. There's just something meditative about that, isn't there?
Oh yeah. It's calming. It's just peaceful.
Are you planning your next bike adventure? Are you wondering how on earth you're going to carry all your gear no matter what type of bike you're riding? Well, whether you're riding a road bike, a gravel bike, a full suspension mountain bike, a steel bike, a carbon bike, an aluminium bike, Old Man Mountain have you covered with their ultra-durable racks and mounts. They're designed to work with any bike. These racks make attaching your luggage hassle-free, so you can focus on the adventure ahead and not be worried that your equipment's going to let you down. Whether it's a weekend trip or a round-the-world tour, their products are the perfect solution for bike travellers like you. Here's the best part. By choosing Old Man Mountain, you're not only equipping yourself with reliable gear, but you're also helping support me in this independent podcast out. Head over to oldmanmountain.com/Seek Travel Ride to learn more. Your new adventure is just about to begin. Now let's get back to the episode. Actually, it reminds me, I interviewed, really early on in the podcast days, a French guy, Paul Detilly. He rode from Paris all the way across to China. And I always remember he had an amazing YouTube video. One of his best camp spots was in a half-built house. I think it was in Croatia as well, looking out over the magic sea there. Because that's something else a few bike travellers have told me, is when you get into the Balkan countries as well, moreover, not so much Croatia, but further into the Balkans, there is a lot of like semi-built buildings that lend themselves to wild camping as well. Did you find that?
I can't say I did, actually, to be honest. I mean, when I was going through the Balkans, I had some pretty interesting and cool camp spots, but I can't say I had slept in any like unbuilt buildings. No, most of my camp spots some of them were pretty rogue. Like I slept behind, like there's a building in the middle of Kosovo. Basically went through Kosovo's capital, and just to the north of that there were some mountains, and I was looking, I'd been looking on Google Maps. That's how I tend to find my camp spots. I was looking on Google Maps, see these mountains in the background. I was like, all right, okay, that could be good. I'll try and find somewhere to camp there. And so I go up and there's like, it's a really posh estate and all of it's like privately owned. And so there were these two guys who were hanging out outside a wedding organizer's building. I sort of asked these guys if I could sleep there. And they said, come back in like 2 hours and we'll tell you. So I'll go to the pub, of course. Another funny story, I ended up getting stuck in that pub. They locked me in. Yeah, when I came back, the guys had already gone because I've been locked in the pub.
How do you get locked in a pub?
Honestly, I have no idea. I went in, they told me that it was closing. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Can I go to the toilet first? And they let me in the toilet and then I came out and the lights were all off.
It was locked.
Yeah, and I was completely locked in. And it's quite funny. You can go back to one of my old videos and it's got me touring around the pub when I was locked inside. And yeah, I was just going around the kitchen. I was very tempted to nick myself some beers as soon as they locked me in. And I was even more tempted to sleep in the pub.
I was going to ask, like, that would have been dreamy, right?
Yeah.
But was your bike outside?
This is a problem because it was lovely and warm inside. It was literally perfect. I would have slept there. The only issue was that I had left my bike was just outside, which was fine. I wouldn't have minded that because it was a very posh resort hotel type of thing. And I knew nobody's niching it there. But the problem was I'd left my bar bag open, which had my wallet and
passport.
Yeah. All of that was like directly on top. So I just thought, I literally, I can't do that. I can't leave it. It's not worth the risk. So I ended up banging on the windows and stuff. And there's some guy came over and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing in here?" I was like, "You locked me in." And then he immediately came in and went to the cash register.
I love these stories. You know, Jamie, how we were talking earlier in the show, you grew up hearing your dad's stories. This is just one of many crazy stories that you'll be able to tell for years and years to come now, right? How cool is that?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Speaking of your dad's adventure, something that I've really loved in following your journey here has been when you've sort of recreated the images again. Like you've got a set of images that your dad did and it was like where he was 40 years ago and then you in that exact same spot. That must be, pretty interesting to be able to find the exact spot in the first place, but also, like, I see it and I think, wow, that's really cool. What's it like for you reliving that sort of bit of family history there?
I really love it because when I'm in those moments and I'm like trying to recreate the photo, it brings like a certain closeness between the two journeys. I'm literally thinking like my dad was in this exact spot 40 years ago on his bike. It's really weird. It's very surreal, but I absolutely love it. And I really enjoy trying to take the photos and stuff, but sometimes it's really difficult. Sometimes I can't find the spots. Sometimes the spots are like completely closed off. I've just recently, so I've been in Lahore and I went around the old fort and I was trying to recreate photos there. And basically every single one of the photos is taken from a section which is completely closed off now. Yeah, so I snuck in, of course.
Very well done.
Yeah, I climbed in.
I'm sure your dad approves.
Oh, yeah. And I climbed into like one of the old, so he took a photo from this window looking outside on the wall of the Red Fort. So I snuck in, look around. There's security guards everywhere. And there's like the doorway's completely closed off by this giant iron fence and a wooden chipboard. I hopped over that and then got inside, and then I gave my dad a call from the window where he took it. So it's really weird. I was like, "Do you recognize this spot that you were standing in this 40 years ago?"
Did he recognize it?
No, I think it's a bit too long ago for his memory, but he recognized the photo. Yeah,
because that's been something that's also been pretty cool is seeing both your dad and your mum. You can tell, like, following you on the socials, like they're following and they're living out your journey in a way as well.
Yeah.
Just hearing how you grew up, I've got an inkling that they're parents that have welcomed you taking on adventure and taking the adventurous route. Have there been moments where you're like, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to share these"?
Oh yeah, there's certain stuff that I haven't told anybody.
I don't know whether I should get you to tell them now. We'll keep it parental safe.
Yeah. I'm saving some stuff for the book, and then some stories will probably come out in the table in like 5 years' time.
I'm so glad to hear that you're putting your mind towards a book already as well. In terms of that, I know you're doing your audio updates daily, which will be great in terms of reflecting, but are you also like keeping your own sort of journals or?
Yeah, I've kept a diary the entire way, so every single day. That is the bane of this trip. That's the part which I hate the most.
You will be so thankful that you're doing this.
Exactly.
You'll be so thankful when this is over that you've got all of that to read back on.
Yeah,
And you'll go, oh, I remember I was so tired. I didn't want to write this, but you'll be so happy that you did.
exactly. That's my thing. Like I know that it's worth it, so I'm sticking to it. But it's just, yeah, that's the part which kills me the most. Is just writing the diary. It's not just recalling the events, like because I'm thinking for my book. I'm writing about how I felt, like how the rooms look and all this sort of stuff, or like all the intricate details, which I know that I'll forget if I don't write them down. It just takes up so much space. Like, so I do it on my phone. It's easier for me to do it on my phone. So I do it on Google Documents, and I can use the voice feature, so I can just speak into my phone. But like every single day is like a full A4 sheet of paper, like worth of writing. Oh, I've got so much.
I'm hoping it's a book that includes photos, but something that would be really cool, and it's an extra family element there, is your mum is an incredible artist.
Oh yeah, she's brilliant.
She is. And hello, Jamie's mum, you're amazing. It would be pretty cool to have her have a few sketches in there, though.
Oh yeah, no, for sure that's actually a brilliant idea. I haven't actually thought of that, but yeah, that would be good. Maybe she can do the cover for it.
She's done an amazing sketch of you.
Yeah, that painting from where was that? It was on the Rhine. Yeah, I love that photo. Yeah, I asked her to paint that for me, and she did a brilliant job as always. I absolutely love it. It's something I'll treasure forever.
What I love is in your daily updates, I actually really love seeing her comments on them because I can see that she's living your adventure each day. And it's also just the loving comments of a mum. Like sometimes it's the hilarity of, it's great to see you're eating some fruit now. It's just like
yeah, it's proper mum comments. Yeah, she's sort of developed her own fan base at this point. There's a lot of people who are on my page basically just for my mum's comments.
Oh, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Her comments always the most liked thing on my post. Yeah, never anyone else. Is literally like I don't pin her comments, but her comments are always at the top of the page because they're always the most liked.
I mean, I've liked them, so they're top quality. It's really cool that your mum and dad have sort of been taking along on this journey, and I think your brother as well. But something that I've really loved is how this journey sometimes has just been you on your own, but often has actually been with other bike travellers. And you've had portions of your journey which you spent with people you didn't know before you set off, and you've made these fast friendships. How's that been?
I mean, that's been amazing for me because like I left on my own, obviously, and then for the first half of the trip, I was cycling on my own, and then when I got to Turkey, yeah, that's where I bumped into Malachi originally because we've been in contact over Instagram, and then yeah, we ended up meeting in Cappadocia, and then I rode with Malachi. He was supposed to be flying from Tbilisi originally, and then I managed to persuade him to come through Russia with me.
And he talks about his Russian experience because I interviewed Malachi.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you want to hear Malachi's story, I will link it in the show notes. But he loved his experience through Russia. Like, it was insightful.
Yeah. No, it was amazing.
Mad border crossing though.
Oh yeah. It was chaotic, and it was a proper eye opener. Like the whole Russian experience, like going through, like seeing a proper militant state for the first time. People are incredibly friendly. Like Dagestan, like one of the friendliest places I've ever been. People are actually lovely there.
Yeah, and Malachi spoke really warmly about them as well. Actually, I think Dragos was there as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. So we bumped into Dragos in Georgia. So he came with us, and then after a couple of weeks of cycling, he decided that he was going to quit his job, travel across the world with us. Yeah, like I have the utmost respect for Dragos and his attitude to life in general. Like he's one of the most adventurous, funny. Yeah, he'll do anything. Like I love that guy. He's brilliant.
It also speaks of just what the camaraderie would have been like. I used the word fast friendships, and Malachi agreed when we were talking about it. And he was talking about yourself and Dragos there as well, and just what it was like for the three amigos, as I called you, to be there on the road. Like, there is this just extra special bond. And I'm not saying every bike traveller has it, but clearly you three connected really deeply there.
Yeah.
The way you travelled, it just really flowed well for all three of you there.
Yeah, we all got on really well, and we were all very similar, which always helps. And it's so nice after like a long, you've had a hard day of cycling or something, like something's gone completely wrong, you're in a terrible situation or whatever. It's nice to have somebody else there who's also suffering it. You get to reflect on the day, and you can laugh about the day. You're like, oh my God, that was such a nightmare experience or whatever. And it's nice to have that, as opposed to, when I was cycling through Europe and I'd have these terrible days, and then you're ending the day and there's no one to talk to, and you're just there like feeling terrible. And yeah, that's awful.
I remember when I was speaking with Malachi, he was saying he had some low moments, and yourself and Dragos helped him through those. And I was thinking when he was telling me that, I bet you when I speak to Jamie, you would say the same thing about Malachi. You probably had your own low moments, and being there with other people helped you through that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's always the way it is. Yeah, you just help each other get through whatever's happening at the time.
Because your dad didn't set off alone, did he?
No, so I basically did the reverse of what he did, because he set off with two other guys, and two friends, Dave Clark and Dave something or other. I can't remember his surname. But one of the Daves, so the other Dave left them in Istanbul, and then Dave Clark continued all the way to Nepal, but he ended up getting some horrendous illnesses. He got incredibly unlucky with his illnesses. So he ended up flying back from Nepal, and then Dad finished the journey alone. So he did it that way. And I've sort of gone the complete opposite, because I started alone, and then I picked up Malachi, and then I picked up Dragos. So I built it up the complete reverse way to my dad. However, obviously, now I'm not riding with those guys, but who knows?
And then you were riding with Ben, and then in Afghanistan and Pakistan, you weren't riding on your own either.
Yeah, like after Dragos had his accident, unfortunately, he had to go home, so he left, and then me and Malachi cycled for like not even that long. It was only a couple of days before we met Ben, that we rode with Ben for another like 2, maybe 3 weeks through the desert. That was brilliant. And then after that, I parted from the lads, because they went up to Tashkent to fly from Tashkent to New Delhi, and I went back down to Termez, to the border of Afghanistan, where I met Nicholas. So Nicholas had actually messaged me on WhatsApp through the cycle travel, like the WhatsApp face.
Is it like Cycling East WhatsApp group?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the Cycling East WhatsApp group, because I was asking questions about Afghanistan, and so he got in contact with me, and he's like asking if you want to join, if we want to meet up and go through. And I was sort of a bit reluctant at first, because I was sort of in the state of, like, as I said, like I really enjoy like spending time in my own company, and I'd been cycling at this point for like quite a few months with people. I kind of wanted a bit of time on my own to cycle on my own, and so I met up with him in Turbez. I told him this. I was like, yeah, like it's nothing personal, but I don't really want to ride with anybody at the moment. And then we ended up at the same hotel in Mazar-e Sharif. We ended up doing this sort of like, it was a different form of riding with somebody, which I kind of liked, which was that we basically ended up at the same places, and obviously we were in contact with each other. So we'd met each other when we were stopping for lunch and stuff, but we weren't actually cycling with each other. For the first week anyway, for the first week, we were sort of cycling off and on, and we were both having our own adventures, which was actually another really nice thing to have, because it was a different side of it. Because when I was cycling with Malachi, and then like you're all having the exact same experience, you're all going off and like having lunch wherever you have lunch, etc. Whereas like when I was cycling with Nick, it was quite interesting, because we'd talk about the day we've had, etc. And yeah, like he'd have a completely different experience to me, and like it's quite interesting. But then I ended up cycling like with him basically for the rest of our time together. except a couple of days. There were a couple of situations where we didn't ride together, like when we crossing over into Pakistan, he got ill at the Afghan border, and the town which directly on the border is not a place you want to hang around. It's where like it's kind of ISIS central.
My mind boggles.
Yeah, and like we couldn't really leave the hotel and all that stuff. So I just said to him, I was like, yeah, I'll meet you at Peshawar. I'm gonna go. So I met him at Peshawar the next day. Yeah, so I've been cycling with Nick for the past almost 2 months actually, but he's just flown to Oman. Yeah, he's now going around the Middle East.
I have a couple of sneaky questions from some of these people that you've travelled with.
Oh yeah.
So the first one is actually from Ben Clark, and he says, "What's the most amazing gift someone has bought you on this trip?"
Oh yeah. So for any of you who don't know, this story comes about from when me, Ben, and Malachi were cycling together, and we were joking about the idea of like we're kind of similar to what Top Gear used to do when they'd go off on their big adventures, and how it'd be funny if we like bought each other gifts and stuff. And the next thing I know, Ben is coming out of a shop and he goes, "I bought you a present," and he hands me this massive sculpture of a squirrel made out of like pottery.
It's like 40 or 50 centimetres high.
Yeah, it's a good like 1.5 foot. Yeah, probably like actually maybe 2 foot. Yeah, it's probably 2 foot tall, this thing.
It gets better.
And it was a money box. It was like one of those ones which you break. Yeah, which you break to crack open. I had a ton of change from like all the countries I visited. My wallet weighed an insane amount from the amount of change I had because I couldn't use any of it. So I put basically all the change in this thing, which was the stupidest idea ever. I used some budgie gauze to wrap the thing onto the back of my bike. And the roads in Uzbekistan are horrendous quality. And so you're cycling like just going and this money box was rattling in my ear for like half the day. But the present was short-lived. It lasted for a couple of hours until it inevitably flung off the back of my bike, smashed all over the road.
Did you pick up your coins?
No, I actually left the coins because like kids take the coins. They like collecting them.
Did you get your own back? Because I actually never saw. Were there gifts given to Malachi and Ben?
We had a deal after that. We were like, right, okay, so I'm gonna get Malachi a present. Malachi gets Ben a present, and Ben gets me a present. So I got Malachi a giant wooden broom.
Oh, because that's so Central Asia. The wooden brooms. You see them sweeping, don't you?
Like that was a good gift. It's not too heavy. It was like a couple of kilograms, maybe. And yeah, it was just an absolute nuisance. It was just overly sized. So yeah, that was pretty funny. And he stuck that in the back of his bike, and I think carried that for like a week nearly, and then left it at a hostel. But yeah, I can't actually remember if Ben got gifted anything. I'm not sure. I think I left before that happened.
Malachi, you'll be listening to this. You need to let me know what happened. And Ben, you'll be listening too. Did you get something? All right. So next question for you, Jamie. This is from Malachi.
Yeah.
Of all the questions Malachi could ask you, he's asking you one about nutrition.
Oh God.
He said, "How many liters of Coke does one need to consume to reach your level of athleticism?"
An unreasonable amount.
It's out of reach, people.
Yeah, you see, with my diet on this trip, like I know people become obsessed with it because I have like I really don't know how to describe it, but I get like addicted to foods.
I'm here for it. Oh my gosh, I can't do a podcast episode that doesn't talk about food. I'm here for this, Jamie.
Yeah, but it's like, but I'll find it. I'll have like a fixation on a single thing. Like I'll go through a country and I'll find one thing that I really like, and I'll consume it daily. And so going through like Germany and Europe, it was salted pretzels. I love salted pretzels, like the big pretzels.
We're not talking like little packets of pretzels that you get in the UK or Australia or Europe. We're talking like...
No, we're talking like proper pretzels. Yeah, so I'd have them, and they're like amazing. I absolutely love them. And then once I got into Turkey, ice creams are just everywhere, and it's so hot. So I just started eating ice creams, and then turns out the ice creams you can find everywhere. And so I've become addicted to ice creams. So a lot of people love that side. 'Cause, like my daily videos, most of the time I do have an ice cream. And yeah, and like going through Turkey, it was the same with like you don't want to drink tap water and all that stuff. And sometimes it's hard to find like actual bottled water, as stupid as it sounds. But I get stop at petrol stations and there's Coke and that sort of stuff everywhere. But Malachi is in no position to talk because the amount of energy drinks that man consumes is worse than my Coke.
I'm going to ask you, and it doesn't need to be a funny answer, it's just something I thought of here, and it's on the spot a bit, but your first reaction, if I was to ask you to describe Malachi and Ben individually with one word, what word would you say for them?
Oh gosh, oh, that's really hard.
It can be as deep or superficial as you want to, can't it?
For Ben, I'd say confident, and he's very loud and very chatty, and yeah, he doesn't care what he's saying with whoever he's with, which is a good thing. And I think Malachi's a hard one.
Probably have sentences for Malachi because you've travelled with him probably the most.
Yeah, it's hard to describe to one word. Determined. Yeah, I'd say determined. Yeah, it was really good. Like when we were riding together, obviously I'm on a 80s touring bike, which is basically a racing bike. Like I'm in a incredibly aggressive position. My tires are incredibly thin, all this stuff. Malachi's on a proper touring bike, but it's more related to gravel and like the proper off-roading than it is to road. So whenever we were on like flat stretches of road and stuff, I was a lot more speedy than him. A lot of the hills doing it on his bike is a lot harder. You know, I'd go up the hill and then I was waiting for him and I'd wait like for a bit and yeah, but it's like he's always there, always and always catching up like, wherever you get. Yeah, it is good to see like someone who isn't phased.
He relishes it in a way. I picked that up when I spoke with Malachi. And shout out to you, Malachi. Again, you're in India at the moment on a little mini pause, nursing a bit of an knee injury, but he's certainly hoping to get back on the road soon. It would be so serendipitous if both of you can link up again, though, Jamie. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that.
I think he would too.
That would make my trip.
Fast friendships, deep friendships too. It's not just superficial. I can really tell that as well.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how your journey here has had to deviate from the route that your dad took. Now, your dad 40 years ago went through Iran, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
That's just not possible for you as a citizen of the UK. There's a little visa situation there that makes it tricky. Maybe it is possible, but I think it's extra hard. So you've had to deviate from that route and you chose to go through Afghanistan as part of that deviation.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because I'm sure I'm like the majority of people in the Western world who've only grown up knowing anything about Afghanistan being the war, and in recent years being about Taliban being in control there and limits to their what's going on with how they govern their people. But I want to know, what was it like, A, making the decision that you were going to go there, and B, how did your perceptions meet up with the reality of what it was like when you were there?
So I first tickled with the idea of going through Afghanistan literally the week before I left. Because Afghanistan has only really been like, it's been quite difficult to get into until like the past 6 months. Yeah, so when I first sort of came up with the idea, it was my dad who came up with the idea.
Oh, wow.
He sent me an article and it was like, yeah, you should actually go through Afghanistan. Immediately that clocked onto me. I was thinking, brilliant, like that's going to be an adventure that'll be really interesting. But then leading up to it, like obviously when I was back in England, like I was thinking like, yeah, that's terrifying me. Like the idea of that, like I really want to do it, but at the same time, like it's a scary thing. The idea of going through Afghanistan, because I had the same view as you say, what everybody in the West sort of has, which is basically just given to you by the media. And then cycling through all these other countries to get to it, it calmed my nerves. The closer I got to Afghanistan, the more calm I was about the idea of going through, because every country which I had gone to, which people had told me, oh, it's dangerous, you shouldn't be there, like people are horrible, like the military, they're all corrupt, like all this stuff. Every country which I'd been through to that point, I just found out that it was it was all made up. Like, obviously, in every country you go to, there's severe cases. There's cases of violence and terror and all this stuff. But that's the same all over the world. In actual fact, most people in most countries are incredibly friendly. They're really nice, hospitable people. And so that eased my mind for sure. And then when I got to Afghanistan, I passed the border into Afghanistan, and it was like the border at Termez was that was like a proper sort of war zone in a way. Like, it was like everybody walking around with AKs. They're ordering you about. Yeah. And then I passed through, and that first day of riding through Afghanistan, that was the toughest I had in Afghanistan in terms of like mentally. Like, I was just thinking I was really on edge about like everything like that. I was like, do not offend anybody. Don't do what you're not supposed to do. Because I was taking photos and trying to take videos and stuff. But at the same time, I was thinking in the back of my head, like, right, okay, I've got to make sure nobody sees this. And is this okay to take a video of and all this stuff? At this point, I was sort of thinking, well, there's no going back now. Like, have I just made the biggest mistake of my life, like entering this country? And then after a couple of days, in my opinion, had changed completely on Afghanistan. I have to say, as backwards as it seems, it's one of the most friendly places I've ever been in my life. The people are genuinely incredibly hospitable. Obviously, there's negative sides to the country and to the way that it's run, but I can only show, this is what I've tried to explain to a lot of people who like leave like political comments in the videos and stuff. I try to explain to people that I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to show my experience of me going through that country, which is a one-sided experience. I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak on the truth of my own experience. If I was someone else, like say if I was a woman, for example, I might have had a very different experience going through. But me personally, my experience was I was met with friendliness, hospitality, and just general care. Like, they really, like they just want to help you as much as you can. They have no bad blood with England or America. I was traveling with Nick at the time. He's American. Like, they have, like, you would have thought that he'd have it a lot worse or anything. They don't care. They simply don't care. Nobody has bad blood over there with anybody, any other country, except Pakistan. That's the one side.
Are you curious about bikepacking but not sure where to start? Or maybe you're starting to think about where you could go for a 2025 bikepacking trip. Well, in late June this year, I am hosting a fully supported lightweight bikepacking tour, which is designed for adventurers of all levels. Together, we'll be spending 6 nights and 5 days exploring the stunning landscapes which are within the Pyrenean foothills. There won't be any massive mountain passes on this route, but you will be enjoying a full sensory experience filled with discovery and camaraderie amongst a group of like-minded people. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Visit seektravelride.com for all the details and secure your place on the tour. I cannot wait to ride with you, and let's share some experiences together. Okay, now back to the episode. That's really surprising. Like, that's something that I wouldn't expect. And I have to say, Jamie, it's through hosting this show I've learned about many countries, and I've learned about my own, I guess, blind spots and biases and perceptions about countries, and just hearing the experiences of people that have been there, and also understanding that what you talk about is what you've experienced. You can't talk about all experiences.
Of course.
You can only talk about what you've seen. But it's something, and a principle that I've really hung true to is you cannot judge a people by its government.
No, not in any way.
Yeah, I can just imagine, though, what it would have been like for you, the first 24 hours on edge, going through like a war zone, probably seeing evidence of a war zone too. That would put anyone on edge. But then it's cool to think that after a while, those layers peeled back and you just saw a totally different side.
Yeah.
There was a moment that I saw, I think, one of your daily reels where you were taking out on like, invited into people's houses, given amazing meals. There was like, they took you somewhere and you had like this lavish roadside picnic where they're like laying out carpets and stuff.
Yeah.
Where was that?
That was just after Kabul. So we'd left Kabul and we'd done a day of riding, heading towards Jalalabad. And we met these guys who were like, they were really friendly. They were all cousins. They invited us back to their place in Kabul. And we were thinking, well, we can't pass up this opportunity. They were really funny. Yeah. So they took us back to their house. We stayed with them. And then the next day they took us around their farm. They had a farm up in the hills and they took us up into the mountains for a picnic. And being British out here, picnic, I'm thinking cheeses, like just random little bits and bobs and stuff. No, they brought out an entire kitchen, a whole kitchen worth of stuff. It was madness, and it was amazing to watch them cook. Like they seriously know how to cook. Like Afghanistan food is some of the best I've ever had. Like it's incredible.
Feel free to describe it. I'm a food lover. Like, what are we talking about here? I'm sort of thinking like, I guess it's more Iranian food. I'm thinking of like, rice pilafs and all those type of stews. Is it similar?
Yeah. So they pride themselves on their pressure cooking over there. So they brought out a pressure cooker and then they basically did like a beef sort of stew type of thing. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what exactly was in it, but it was delicious. And what they do is, yes, they got this massive blanket out, put it on the floor, then they roll out sheets of plastic because you're sitting cross-legged on the floor, they just pile a load of rice in front of you, and then you have like cucumber and all these different vegetables which you dip in salt and eat that. That's something which I'm taking home, by the way. They all eat like salt and tomatoes and stuff. Delicious. It's incredible.
Hang on, Jamie. Are you telling me you've got to this stage of your life and only discovered salt as a garnish for tomatoes and cucumbers?
Yeah. Speaking for myself, I've never had it in England. I don't know if anybody does have it in England. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm being an idiot, but...
Again, I can't judge a country by its food, but England has pretty grey food. Yeah. I grew up with the Greek heritage, so salted cucumbers were what we would eat. We'd pick them from the garden, of course. We grew them ourselves. And salted cucumber on a hot summer's day in Australia hits the spot.
It's amazing. It's so nice. And then, you have a pile of rice in front of you and you just pour the stew in that. And then you're taking like I forget what it's called, but their bread is it's kind of like a naan bread, but like a pizza dough sort of base, like a Neapolitan pizza style. Like it's really nice and salty bread, delicious. The bread is your cutlery. Like you use the bread, you open it up, you rip it open, and then you sort of just grab the rice and the meat or whatever with that. Oh, it's incredible, delicious.
You can learn so much about a country by its people and you learn insights into its culture. Did you find, is there a sort of communal culture there? Like, do you find that there's a community within groups there from that perspective? Is it family groups or a lot of people all together? Like, did you see insights into that?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's all family. It's all family based over there. Like, obviously people have friends, but most of it's family based. Like the guys who we went to Kabul with, they were a group of cousins, 30 cousins, 30 of them.
30?
Yeah, I know, it's mad. And every Friday they get together and they go out for a meal and then they go back and they all just hang out with each other and they all help each other with specific jobs. They all own different businesses. So it creates like a nuclear family. Like it's the same way which they do with India and stuff. Like everybody has different businesses. They all help each other so they don't have to pay for external things. Yeah.
And I imagine, growing up in war Afghanistan's been at war since the 80s, really, and probably well before that, probably centuries, right? But real destructive war that in our modern time. In fact, when your dad was touring there, it would have been in war as well.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't tour there, probably because it was in war.
Yeah. So Dad went through Iran whilst it was the Iran-Iraq war, which he didn't know about because obviously back then there's no internet. Yeah, no internet, and can't find that sort of stuff out. But he sort of went down the bottom of Iran and missed out Afghanistan, which I think he regrets. But he would love to go to Afghanistan for sure.
Does your dad still bike tour?
Yeah, he still does. He still does stuff. He does more motorbike touring now than bicycle touring. He's got a big GS 2 years ago. Well, his plan was to drive to Mongolia and back. And he ended up getting to Georgia, couldn't go into Azerbaijan because it was it was just after COVID. So it's the same situation that they're still in. You can't get the ferry across. So, and mum refused to let him go through Russia. So yeah, he didn't get to go through there. So he ended up touring around Georgia, which I don't think he regrets at all. Like Georgia is incredible. And I actually went out to meet him in Georgia because I finished uni for the summer and flew out to meet him and toured on the back of the motorbike with him for a week. And yeah, so he does a lot of that sort of stuff. He's done like a bit over to Morocco and he's done big trips on the motorbike. But I think he's going out with my brother. So my brother's going to be cycling across the world next year.
Gosh, it really is a Hargreaves family affair here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's, I think Dad's planning on joining him for the Pamirs.
I'm so going to have you all on. In fact, actually, spoiler alert,
Yeah.
I will be having your dad on, which will be amazing. It would be so cool to speak with him. What would be really cool, actually, is Jamie, and Malachi and I talked about this. It'd be awesome if at the end of both of your trips to have a joint session, and it would be cool to interview both. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Because with the motorbike stuff, I mean, you had your own little side quest in Pakistan, which was motorbike touring, which was brought on primarily because, well, this is an assumption again, and any bike traveller who's gone to Pakistan will know what I'm talking about. You can't just cycle freely in Pakistan.
No.
Legally, you can cycle freely, but you'll be escorted by police the whole way. That's what I understand anyway. Is that was definitely the case for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like Pakistan has been the most nightmarish country so far in terms of like the governments and stuff like this. Like the country itself is incredible. People are incredibly friendly. Like same situation that I've had with most of the countries that I've been through. It was a nightmare. Yeah, my first introduction to Pakistan was I literally crossed the border and I wasn't allowed to go across the street to get a bottle of water. Like I had to have an armed guard with me, and then they wouldn't allow me to cycle to Peshawar. We were refusing it completely. And so I had to put my bike in the boot of this car and drive to Peshawar with an armed guard. And then halfway along the way, we picked up like another military escort. And so I had like a van in front with 8 armed guards in there. Like they all just followed. Yeah, it was just the most irritating thing ever. And then after Peshawar, I managed to sneak past the armed guards and get over to Mardin. Mardin is like one of the terrorist hotspots at the moment. Yeah, I basically got stopped at the border to the city and they wouldn't allow me in without a military escort. So they told me to hang on for a bit. I was waiting for an hour and a half at the border. And then eventually this escort turns up and they were saying, right, okay, we're going to take you to this hotel. And I said, look, I'm not going there. Because what they do is they're all on payroll there. Like, so they take you to a hotel, which is incredibly fancy. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing that they get a cut of it, which I don't like because I don't like spending money for insanely expensive hotels.
No, you don't even like pitching your tent if you don't need to. You're quite happy just dirtbagging in a bus shelter in your sleeping bag.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't like being forced anywhere, and I don't like being told to pay for a hotel. Like I'm fine with booking a hotel, that's fine, but I'm not going to stay in a hotel which they tell me to because it's the most expensive one there. So I basically told this to them. I was like, look, I'm going to find my own hotel, sure. Like you can give me an escort in, but I'm going to find my own hotel. They really did not like this. So they said, no, we're going to ban you. You're not allowed to come into Mardin now. And it was literally getting dark. It was getting dark at this point, and I do not want to cycle on roads in Pakistan at night. It's just chaotic. So I was like, well, what do you expect me to do now then? And they said, well, you got to cycle back to Peshawar. You got to cycle back to where you came from. You know, it's getting dark and they're telling me to cycle backwards 80 kilometers.
Unreasonable, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, right, screw this. So I cycled back a little bit and then I found some country roads and snuck into Mardin. Got to a hotel. At this point, Nicholas said he'd left like an hour or two after me from Peshawar. I ended up at this hotel. Yeah, I gave them my passport, but with my visa open. So that it has like my visa for Russia was like a photo. It kind of looks like a passport page. So I gave them that so that they could take a photo of that. Because they take your passport everywhere here to take photos of. So they took the photo of that, like hoping that they wouldn't register me so that the police didn't know that I was there. Yeah, then I sort of rang Nick and I was like, right, gave him the instructions to get into Mardin. Yeah, he followed that trail, and then I got a call when he arrived, and he said, "Yeah, just to let you know, there's like 8 armed guards outside."
Gosh.
And so I go downstairs, and we're interrogated for an hour and a half. Like, they're just asking questions, I presume, because obviously I snuck in. And in the end, they allowed us to stay, but they just made it an absolute nightmare. Yeah, they didn't allow us to go out for food. We weren't. We decided that we were going to rent motorbikes there because it was just like awful trying to do it with the escorts. So we thought, well, we'll just get motorbikes and then we can travel further and go around the whole of the mountains, see everything. So that, yeah, we can do side quests and stuff like go up these valleys, which you can't really do on a bike because it's just unnecessary. And so we're trying to find motorbikes here in Mardin, and these guys are being a nightmare. And like the old guards who were in the hotel, they certainly slept in the hotel, like in the lobby, just on the sofas with their guns. And these guys were sound. They were really nice guys, and they wanted to help us and stuff. But they were told us they're like, yeah, we've been told not to help you get motorbikes, so we're not allowed to help you. And you know, it's nothing to do with their fault. So like, I'm not going to punish them for it. And they'd been told that they weren't allowed to go out and get food for us. Like, we weren't allowed to go out and get food. So we were basically under house arrest in this hotel and like not allowed to leave. And yeah, it was an absolute cock up. Yeah, we decided at this point, right, yeah, we're not going to do that. Let's just go to Islamabad because we know we can get motorbikes in Islamabad. We know the security situation was better in Islamabad. So we continued, yeah. So we cycled back, went down to Islamabad, where we rented motorbikes, and yeah, I do not regret it at all. Like, it was 100% worth it.
The images from the mountains, those side quests you did. Oh my God. I told you I'm a mountain lover. Whoa, they are incredible.
It's beautiful.
Beyond words, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, if you ever get the chance, anybody who's listening, like, it's 100% worth it going up into the mountains in Pakistan. Like, it's like, I tried to show my adventure as much as possible, and like, so that I can bring you guys along with me, but it's really hard to actually sort of show what it's like over there. Like, it's, you know, you can't do it. You have to be there.
I often ask Jamie for people to tell me about a moment of awe where Mother Nature makes them feel teeny tiny small, like a little size of an ant.
Yeah.
And those big mountains would do that around every corner, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. It was amazing.
What I do want you to do then is I want you to share one day of your trip. It's a trip of so many days and so many countries, so many experiences. But I want you to take me and the listener to a random day. It can be from wherever you like it to be, and just tell us about one day of your trip.
Yeah, I was thinking before this podcast which day I should choose, because as you say, there's so many. I really didn't know which to think of. And I've got 2 days in particular which I can think of, which were just like amazing days. And I think I'll probably go with, yeah, I'd say so one of the days when I was in Montenegro.
Mm-hmm.
So I had ended up cycling up this valley, and at this point I was using my cycle app thing, and it was taking me across this track through the mountains. I thought, oh, that'll be a good little adventure. So I go up this valley, and I'm knocking on houses of where to stay, and I end up sleeping in this farmer's field. And this guy, he allows me to sleep in his field, and I have dinner with him and his family, and it's lovely. They asked me, why are you coming up this valley? Like, why are you here? There's nothing up here. And I said, oh, I'm taking this track over the mountains tomorrow. They said, no, you can't do that. That's impossible. I was in the mind of, oh, they don't understand, like, this is a touring bike, you know, it's not a normal bike. Like, I can get over this. I should have listened to him. So the next day.
Here we go.
Yeah. So the next day I wake up and like have breakfast, and it's all storm cast clouds overhead, and I set off. It's immediately I'm hit with a massive alpine like grade climb. Like, it's all like switchbacks for about 15 to 20 kilometers up onto this plateau at the top of the mountains, all gravel. Like, none of it's road. So it's like, I didn't mind that bit. That bit was fine. It was hard though, because it was like really hot and humid, and there were like mosquitoes coming at me and stuff. And then I get up towards the top, and this thunderstorm rolls in, And it's like the most incredible display of thunder I've ever witnessed. It was like I was completely immersed in it, like thunder going off every 2 seconds, like just pelting it down with rain. Like I'm absolutely drenched at this point. The entire track turns into a massive flash flood. Bikes soaked, gears soaked. Everything's a bit miserable at this point. But I kind of like that sort of stuff. Like I don't mind that sort of stuff. But then thunder passes and I'm in the middle of nowhere. And this track it just gets worse and worse and worse. It turns out that what it is, it's not a road in any way. No cars drive over it. It's actually a traveler track. You can see there's all these pastures at the top, these beautiful meadows with these just open pastures, like in the middle of the mountains. Not a soul to be seen. No one's there, and you can tell that these pastures are where they camp up in the summer or wherever. I don't really know much about their life, but I know that they pitch camps. And so I'm traveling down this track. It's just the roughest thing ever. Like if I was on a proper mountain bike, like it would have been fine. Like it would have been breezy. Like I would have really enjoyed it. But I'm on a 75-kilogram bike with no suspension. The bike has no place being there at all. And so I'm touring along this track, and it's about 100 kilometers across to the nearest road.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Back it up here. I try not to interject too much to people's stories. 100 kilometres to the road. I was waiting for this adventure to be like 10 Ks of, then bush bashing. 100.
Oh, no. This is
next level.
Yeah,
Continue.
This was literally just like 100 kilometers of like getting off my bike, pushing my bike, and like getting on where I can. And it's just, none of it's like rideable, like the section of which you can ride is just torture because it's going like, it's horrible. And but the scenery was beautiful, and all I had was food wise, because I was thinking like it's like a proper gravel track. I was thinking I'll be able to get across this easy, getting across it, and I'm like rushing with my bike because I'm thinking I don't want to camp up here because I knew that there was going to be more thunderstorms and I didn't have food. Like I had one sandwich, and that's it.
This is grim. And you live for food, right?
Yeah, of course. And bearing in mind, the sandwich which I've got is like wrapped in tinfoil and it's drenched.
Soaking wet.
Yeah. It's just soggy bread. And so I eat that for lunch with an incredible view, like just sat on these rocks. I have to say, like, although it was like incredibly tough, it was one of my best days because I was just there on my own in the thick of it. Like, there's nothing there. There's literally nothing there. There's no people, no roads, no noise. I was just expecting to like see somebody at some point. Nothing. No people. Literally just animals and mountains and trees and grass, pastures, rivers. It was like I was cycling through the middle of Alaska. It was incredible. And anyway, after this entire day of like hauling my bike, bear in mind I'd started like early. And after this long day, finally get to the top of this thing. And like the start of it was the worst because it was just a lot of it's, as I said, it was up in the mountains, like high up in the mountains. So there's a lot of hauling my bike up these tracks. And like I'm trying to wheel my bike up like insane gradients with like rocks and stuff in the way, which is the worst thing ever because your wheel gets stuck in a rut or something, and then you got to try and get it out, and that takes like so much energy. Eventually, after this incredibly long and grueling day, I get back down and the road starts to get a bit better and a bit better and a bit better. And then eventually it gets to tarmac. And I'm like, at this point, I'd passed like sort of 2 or 3 houses sort of just before the tarmac. And I was thinking, yes, this is promising. And that moment of relief, like when you get to tarmac and you're just thinking, oh my God, it's over.
You could nearly kiss it, couldn't you?
Yeah, literally. And then I had this like incredibly long descent all the way back down into this valley and then hit the main road. And yeah, I just cycled down the road a little bit and asked somebody if I could sleep in their garden or slept in their garden. And that was incredible. That was absolutely amazing.
Absolutely mega. And I'm sort of thinking, you know how we've talked about it a few times of growing up hearing your dad's stories of adventures, side quests on his trip, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
this is your own start to that. Like, these are the type of things that, you know, in the moment are tough, but as you said, they're the ones that you reflect back on. Because we do.
Yeah.
We reflect back on hard times the most, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm actually of the opinion, like, I would rather have all the tough days of my life and the hardest days of my life than any of the easy, like, fun, relaxing, like, nice days of my life. Just because whenever you're in those days or those situations where everything's going wrong or everything's really hard, those are the memories that you remember the most. I remember all of my worst nights far more than I remember the best nights. I've stayed in some really comfy hotels on this trip, and I've stayed in some absolute, just the worst places imaginable. And the worst places imaginable are often the times which I would rather keep, because they're the things which you remember.
So you're a northerner that likes the cold, and you wear rose-tinted glasses. I love it. I have a special question, which I've got for you, and it's actually a voice memo, and I'm going to do the tricky thing where I play it through the microphone.
Hey Jamie, it's Dad here. Here's a question for you. So I know you're travelling with all your Spotify account and GPS and mobile phone, etc. And as you know, I travelled without all that on paper maps and none of the music or anything like that. How do you think you would get on if you didn't have any of all the modern stuff? And which do you think you would prefer? Do you think you'd prefer it without or with?
There you go. How could I do a podcast with you and not have your dad ask a question, right?
Yes, it's got to be done.
What do you think?
I mean, that's a very good question. And I'd say to that, I could proudly say I can handle any situation. I think handling it without all this technology, yeah, I could definitely do. I mean, he knows. I was raised by him. He knows that I'm good at map reading and I'm good at getting to places. I have a very good internal compass. I would have no problem with the navigation and stuff. I think the thing which I'd find the hardest out of all of that is just not listening to music. I love music, and music's one of my things which I pride myself on. I love my music, and I think that would be the hardest for me, is not listening to that. But then if he had somebody with him for the entire way, whereas when I'm on my own, sorry, not for the entire way. From Nepal, he didn't, but when I'm on my own, that's when I really listen to music. Like if I'm cycling with people, I don't.
There's also an element where, like, sometimes I've spoken to people where they don't listen to music all the time, but they use it as a mood lifter sometimes when they need it to get them through times. I imagine that's for you as well. Yeah,
that definitely does help. Like I have certain playlists for different things, and like I've got a playlist which like if I'm I don't know, if I'm about to battle like some insane hill, yeah, I'll put that on. It does give you a bit of motivation, but I don't need the motivation, but it helps.
So do you think you could, on balance then, you don't need the GPS and the maps, but would you do it without music?
Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, I definitely would. Like if there was no other option, like when he was cycling, yeah, I would still do it. But if there's no other reason not to, then no, I wouldn't do it without music. I love music.
I wonder what my response would be. And I wonder what his answer would be. Like, would he do it the way that he did it, or
no?
Would he go purist on it?
I could answer that for him. If he's doing this again, he would do it with music. He'd do it with podcasts, and he'd do it with GPS.
Very good, very good. Well, speaking of music, Jamie, we're coming up to having to wrap this up, sadly, because time's going, but I could speak to you for hours and get so many different stories. But I always finish the show up with the same 3 questions, and one of them is music related. You're a guest of the show. There is a Seek Travel Ride playlist, which is a song chosen by each and every guest. There's been so many guests, the playlist is like 5.5 hours long now.
Okay.
What song would you pick to be the soundtrack to your adventure, and it gets added to the playlist?
See, okay, so
this is hard, I know.
Yeah, this is really hard. So I know, well, I've got my favorite song. My favorite song of all time is Tennessee Whiskey by Chris Stapleton. So I'm going to say that.
Very good. Well, you are down. There you go. Tennessee Whiskey. That's your song.
Brilliant.
All right. Next 2 questions. This one will be interesting. You're given a choice one day. You can choose to go in one direction, and it is going to mean that for the whole day, you are forever on the roughest washboard, most corrugated road in the world. And I don't mean ones where there's a pothole here and there and you got to weave. I mean like your teeth are chattering. Like it could rattle your fillings out, right?
Yeah.
Or you go in the other direction and you've got like a brutal headwind all day. Which one are you going to choose?
Or That's an insanely hard question. I think before coming on this trip, I would have said the headwind, but like after cycling through the deserts in Kazakhstan, I am done with headwind. I would genuinely say, like, if we're talking an incredibly tough headwind, like where you're pushing like really hard to get anywhere.
I think we have to make the harshness equal on both. So it can be the harshest headwind in the world, right? But it also equally is like the harshest corrugated road in the world too.
Oh, okay. God, it's an insanely hard question actually, because I don't want either. I think for me, just wind is the most irritating thing ever. So I'm going to say I'd rather have the washboard because at least I can stop, and if you stop, there's nothing there, like you can relax. Whereas if you got an insanely hard headwind, you stop and you're still being battered by the wind.
I guess you could just turn around and then have an awesome tailwind. I never give people that option though.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, one of the best answers I had to this was a recent answer by Marta Bayus. Hi Marta, she cycled right through South America.
Yeah.
I think she chose the wind because at some stage you know that it won't be windy every day, whereas the corrugations are forever going to be like that and there's never going to be a change. So I thought that was quite cool.
Yeah.
Final question for you, Jamie. I really love this question because everyone's answer is unique and gives me a real good insight into their own adventure. I want you to finish this sentence for me. And the sentence is, the best thing about taking a bike adventure is...
seeing the world through your own eyes instead of seeing it through what you're told.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. That's totally what's come out with you telling your stories too. Getting rid of other people's perceptions and finding your own reality out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm sure you do too, listeners. In fact, listeners, you'll be listening to Jamie and many of you will already be fans and know who he is, but there will be some of you who didn't know this story existed. If you want to follow Jamie along, I highly encourage you to do so. I follow you on Instagram, Jamie, but what's the best place for people to follow along your journey?
Yeah, it's Instagram or Facebook. On Instagram, it's j.a.hargreaves. On Facebook, I think if you just put Jamie Hargreaves, it should come up.
I will put links to both of those in the show notes so that people can track you and follow along. I fully appreciate the work that must go into putting the daily snapshot videos together, by the way, because I don't think they magically just happen out of nowhere. I know that it would take so much time and fiddling to do them, but it's been so awesome to be able to track you along. Jamie Hargreaves, this podcast session was months in the making, and can I just say, it's been such a long time that we've been chatting, but it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved hearing your story, from being motivated as a kid in year 2, listening to your dad's adventures, to how you had an adventurous childhood, to taking on this journey, to embracing the extra hard days and saying that they're the ones that you would seek out, to looking to go to places where most of us, sadly, would say are just not worth visiting because of reasons that are potentially unfounded as well. And to showing us this side of your adventure. I know you've got a long way to go still to get to Australia. Who knows which derby you're going to be finishing in? Maybe Derby in Tassie with a mountain bike park finish, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Savour the moments when you get to the beaches in Australia as well. I hope that we can connect again to plug the gaps from here to there.
Yeah.
But all to say, thank you so much for sharing your story and experiences here on the podcast for Seek Travel Ride.
Yeah, of course. Well, as I said when I first came on, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, listeners, I don't know about you, but I absolutely love listening to Jamie share his stories there, share his adventures. And I know I said it a few times in the show, but just hearing him live out an adventure that he had heard from his dad and to put his own mark on it and share it along the way. I've especially really enjoyed the way that he has shared this story with so many people through his videos and his photos. And as well, being able to go to those exact spots from 40 years ago and do that comparison from then to now. I could really tell, listening to Jamie, that it meant a lot to him as well, and obviously still does every time he goes somewhere, thinking, this is where Dad was, this is what I've been told about. And here's to the many adventures that Jamie has along the way. Normally, Jamie, I wish people tailwinds, sunshine, great weather, and good moments, but you did come out and say that you enjoy the hard moments, so maybe you can have some hard moments that you get through, just so that it puts an extra smile on your face. Either way, thanks so much for sharing your story. And listeners, let's keep an eye to see where this adventure takes Jamie. As I mentioned in the show, I will have the absolute pleasure to interview Jamie's dad, so let's look forward to listening to what the original adventure from 40 years ago was like as well. Now, if you've been enjoying listening to Seek Travel Ride and you would like to show your appreciation for the show, you can do so by buying me a coffee. I've put the link in the show notes to make it nice and easy. Buy me a few virtual coffees to help me get along with the production of the podcast. And when you do, please do me a favour, share a message with me and let me know what you love most about the show. Until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. Hey there, adventurers! Are you loving the stories on Seek Travel Ride? If so, you can help the podcast wheels turning, literally. Head to the link in the show notes and buy me a coffee. Every coffee fuels this podcast, supports incredible guest stories, and keeps the adventure alive. So go ahead, click the link in the show notes, grab me a virtual brew, and let's ride on together.